Hi folks, for this week you'll notice the assignment is to work in groups, and part of your work in groups is going to be to use a RFP, a federal RFP, and then rate an application for funding for that RFP. There's some great opportunities for you now or when you graduate, if you like, to actually serve as a peer reviewer for the federal government. Office of Violence Against Women has a solicitation out currently for peer review, but I also think it's a great way for you to learn how to write a better proposal. At least it makes it better for me, but by kind of going through this process of creating a rubric. So you'll notice on page 11 of the application here, I'm just going to briefly look at these sections. I'm not going to look at them all. It says here are the elements of a complete application. So when you submit your application, the federal government's going to go through and they're going to look and see if you have something in each of these particular areas. And then what they'll do is they're going to send it out to peer reviewers, which are professionals in the field who will actually read and score the applications. And before you can do that, you need to come up with a rubric. So I just want to talk briefly about how I do it. You don't have to do it this way, but it's a great way to kind of think about this. And you've done some of this last week when you actually went through and rated the local proposals. But so what I've done is I've here is RFP. On this side over here, you'll notice that I've just taken the data points and put them in here. So the first one's a summary data sheet. They get 5 points if they've touched on each of these issues. So as you read through the summary data sheet, did they touch on each of these issues? If they did, then you can give them 5 points. It gets a little trickier when you start to get down here into the project narrative section, because the total project narrative is worth 60 points. However, it's broken up into different sections. So the first part of it, the purpose of the application, has these points here, and these bullets here, and if they answer these, they get 10 points for that. So I've just put that over here as purpose of the application. So one of the other things you can do from an assessment perspective, and your group can decide this, is you can copy this off and you can put this in here under purpose of the application. So as you're reading through it, this is easy because you're just reading one, but as you're reading through, say you're reading through several of these, this way you can make sure that you can say, okay, did they identify the problem? Is it serving more than one county? So there's a couple of ways that you can do that. So what I'd ask you to do is to go through and create a rubric on how you're going to assess all these points. I guess another thing, I've had colleagues who have gone and said each one of these bullet points has equal weight, and then take that 10 and divide it by the, I guess there's 9 bullet points here, so they get 1.1 point for each one, and then they would just total it up and say this is the total amount of points that the person gets. So that's the process that you would go through to kind of create your rubric and then to rate the application. The really cool thing I'll say, I've done this for the feds for a couple of times, and usually it's raters from all over the country who you don't know, and you'll rate the application individually, and then you'll come together and you'll see where you have alignments. It's called a consensus call, and on the consensus call you'll discuss the application and come up with a final score among, say, the 3 raters. But the interesting thing I found about that is if we all use the same rubric, creating a rubric similar to this here, that at the end, when we're doing the consensus call, it's amazing how close we are in our scores on the applications, because I think the federal government does a really great job, although it's a significant amount of paper, frankly. They do a really good job of laying out each of these sections. So if you're thinking of a career as a federal grant writer, it's really easy to just go through and make sure that you covered each one of these. Okay, got that one, this one's kind of missing. So you get a better way, I think it's an easier way to kind of write an application, and there's less ambiguity in the rating scales and things like that. So hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Thank you.